Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AI Proem's podcast, To Fringe Understanding. I'm your host, Grace Xiao. As many of you know, I also write the Substack newsletter AI Proem, and if you didn't know, please go check it out. On this show, we often talk about the valuation of AI companies and speak directly with the builders, founders, as well as the researchers. But today, we're speaking with someone who helps companies navigate the actual change and adoption process, an AI consultant and strategy advisor. Alex Lu Shengyun is a senior strategy and value creation advisor with over 15 years of experience working at the intersection of artificial intelligence, commercial strategy, and investment value creation. A former partner at leading consulting firm Simon Kucher and at data and AI consultancy Artifact, he now works primarily with European companies and how to translate AI data and advanced analytics into tangible business outcomes. It is also very rare to get someone who has an understanding of the EU and China angle. I think as the conversation often revolves around China and the US. So here we go. Hi, Shengyun. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Thanks for inviting me. I'm also very excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, awesome. So tell us about your journey. I think you're in a pretty unique position. Like I said in the intro, a lot of the conversation about AI right now is often positioned between China versus US, but you actually work predominantly with European companies in adopting AI and their digital transformation. So tell us about your background and how you got into this.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. So actually, I went to France. I spent more than 10 years in France. I went to France in 2004, and I studied in a school called École Polytechnique. And then when I graduated from the school, I started my work in Europe, mainly for automotive industry, and afterwards for the consulting industry. And still, when I was in the consulting industry, I worked mainly for the auto sector. So I have a very traditional background of automotive. That's why some of the work I'm doing currently in the AI, we can come back on that, is in the automotive manufacturing sector and mainly for European companies, because I started my career in Europe, so I know them pretty good. And the other thing point I want to mention is the school I studied, actually the École Polytechnique, was, let's say, it was a famous school in France or in Europe, but it's not so famous in the world. Actually, this is France. They have a different educational system, but still, with the rising of AI in Europe, especially the French large language model called Mistral AI, the school becomes famous because the founder of the of Mistral AI comes from the same school. So basically, it's also a little bit like Tsinghua University in China. It's like the Tsinghua in France, having the best talents for the AI. So nowadays, when I continue my work in the AI transformation for companies or AI implementation for the companies, I work a lot with European companies. Firstly, I know them, as I said before, and secondly is when we look into the global competition between China, US, and Europe, in the AI landscape, is pretty clear. It's like China and US, or US China being the tier one or first ranked models, and Europe is kind of lag behind. So most of the European companies, they have this kind of attitude of being a bit complex, I would say. On one hand, they are kind of seeking for, of course, for the best technology in the world to enhance their company's competitiveness. And there comes the question, how I can define my AI strategy for next years between Chinese and US tech stack in AI. And the second question they raised often is, while we are European companies, we want to keep our AI sovereignty, which is a very important topic in AI. Again, we can come back on that. So their question is, okay, between these US and China tech race, is there any place for European companies um, regarding the foundation model companies or application companies or even corporate clients? What could be the playground for European companies? So these are major two questions are often received from European companies, and you can see the thinking angle is the European companies want to at the same time keep this AI sovereignty, and at the same time keeping their competitiveness. That makes the question a little bit complex. Yeah.
Actually, why don't we just double click on that, unpack that a little bit? What's your view on it? Like, what do you advise your clients to do then if they are kind of caught in a pickle or unsure how to build out the next stage of their infrastructure, kind of being caught in between China and the US?
Yeah. So the first thing I always shared is in this tech race, actually, China and US, we are not. I want to twist a little bit the angle, saying, "Oh, this is a competition between China and US." Actually, if we look into details, actually, China and US are taking different directions in terms of the AI development, if I can say, because let's say if we look into the US, AI ecosystem or the AI development, I think a lot of efforts are put on the foundation model or kind of foundational research regarding how AI can become AGI, can bring benefits to the humanity, or how we can guardrails AI so that, okay, one day we will not go into the direction of science fiction movies. So this is a little bit the push from the US AI companies. While in China, actually, the ecosystem or from the national perspective, China's AI is more about applications and more about how we can have the beneficial from the whole society from the AI, and how I can combine AI with my traditional technologies or traditional business to grab more values. So if we think in this angle, actually, it will give us two different pictures. One is we cannot say that it's kind of front to front competition, because these two nations are just take different angles. The second thing is if we look into details based on these assumptions, we will say one nation is pursuing having the most advanced AI technology, and one nation is pursuing most most beneficial AI for the society regarding cost effectiveness, etc., etc. So then it comes to the question that you raised for European companies is we always brainstorm and conclude on the simple question is what kind of AI are we looking for European companies? Are we looking for, let's make it simple, I take an analogy. Are we looking for a kind of, you need all the employees to be the PhD employees having the most intelligence in the world? Then that will be the US foundation models. Or if we want to say we have the most cost efficient and best performing employees, virtual employees in your company, then we might consider Chinese models, foundation models. Then this is the trade-off I think the companies should figure out. And the answer will not be so simple like that, saying, oh, tomorrow I will switch to all US tech stack or Chinese tech stack. I would say the two ecosystem, as in the past in the digital area, will still continue for European companies, meaning that they need to jungle with Chinese tech stack in certain markets. Maybe in Chinese market for sure, but for other markets, developing markets where the Chinese foundation model are taking influence, and as well as with US models. So this is the thing, and I think the other angle answer to their question is I usually take the statement from Jensen Huang saying the AI is kind of 5 layers cake. So what we are talking about is only one layer, which is the foundation model. And if we go deeper, then we will have infrastructure like data centers, like powers, chips, and electricities. And if we go upper, we will have the applications. So I will tell European companies, or I told European companies often is, I think the use cases in Europe makes a lot of sense because the cost is there and the employee was pretty much expensive than Chinese employees. So if we deploy the same model, let's say, and it, of course, the ROI, return on investment, you make the business case very easily in Europe than in China because the labor cost is kind of lower. And the advantage of Europe, I would say one of the advantages is about power and electricity. I study in France, and in France, you would see they have the most advanced nuclear power technology in the world, at least in the past. And I think the French government is also think about how we can build more power plants in the country to support Mistral's AI development. And I listened to the founder of Mistral AI, Arthur Mensch, he explained to European Commissions how we can keep the AI development in the Europe is just he make a very simple analogy, meaning that intelligence equals to token. So we all know that. And he said token equals to electricity. So if we want to make our society more intelligent in Europe, then we need to build infrastructure and more efficiently and more sustainably. And my last point is I looked into the report released by Stanford, the HAI Index. Very interesting because US is far away far away in advance compared to other countries in terms of the number of data centers. It's around 2,000 or more than 2,000. I didn't remember the exact numbers. And the second and the third, it's not China in terms of the number of data centers. Based on the data, is United Kingdom and Germany. So Europe has the capability to build power plants, but I tend to believe these power plants are not currently used to train US models, in my opinion. So again, this is the European competitiveness if we want to talk about AI. So if we enlarge a little bit picture, we say that, okay, it's five layers cake, then again, China maybe is better, performing better in terms of the electricity, maybe a little bit less performing regarding the chips. Same situation for Europe. So it's not only about the most performing models, right?
That's a really interesting take. So help me understand, like, what do you actually advise on these companies for? Give me some examples on the kind of work you're working on. I want to hear from you. How are you actually helping companies go through this AI transition? And what are the bottlenecks? Maybe further down, we can talk about that. What are the challenges? What are the exciting areas? But just help us understand what are the day-to-day tasks that you're working on.
Yeah, thanks. Again, I might share two different perspectives from my experience. One is, again, with European companies. It's very interesting example because actually, I built a product doing this kind of market intelligence, market research for European companies. And the value proposition at that time is we can save time for your employees and and we make your organization more efficient. And basically, we find when we sold this kind of value proposition to different companies, I see very interesting different answers. One is on the European side, he would say, "Oh, this is very interesting, but before implementing, we need to think about a kind of tomorrow's process, meaning that if we put your AI product into our organization, how our employees will work with your product together. What's the process look like? And how many new skills would my employees need to perform or to better use your products?" So I think that the European companies' mindset is they will need some time to conceptualize the AI products or AI use cases, and then they will need to conceptualize and project, especially once the product is in place, what my company will look like. So they will spend a little bit more time than Chinese companies to figure out the regarding the talents, regarding the organization, regarding the process. And in my opinion, it might be a right approach, in my opinion, meaning that they put human before the technology. And this is what I observed when I implement AI for companies, saying that, okay, I bring you the best technology, but often we might have improved efficiency by 10 times or 5 times in one single process, but actually there will be some bottlenecks in other organizations, in the rest of the organization, that you cannot increase the efficiency of the whole workflow, let's say. So that's why a lot of people in US, they talk about AI native organization to kind of remove the bottlenecks in the organization. And I worked another example. I worked for a European company. It's very interesting. He said, "Oh, I received a high level management." He said, "I received so many reports from my employees. I don't have enough time to review and to approve them." That's the case because we increased efficiency of the working level of the people. Then the bottleneck becomes suddenly the leadership. And then we need maybe an empowered leadership by AI in the future to make the whole organization more efficient. Or we need to think about a new organization where we include AI agents and human beings together, because the two natures are producing things on a different scale. So this is most of the time, this is the European companies. And for the Chinese companies, the mindset is totally different. If we implement AI solution, the same product to a Chinese client, the answer would be, oh, that's very interesting. You save 20 or 30% of my employee's time, but I cannot, let's say, lay off the employee and to make some savings. So just tell me for the time we saved, where he can work to produce more. So it's always in the mindset, okay, we have some time saving, but I cannot pay 80% of the salary to the same guy. So in order to, so I need to pay him 100% salary. So your business case doesn't work for me. So where we
That's
can
really
grab more
interesting.
values. Yeah.
That's
So
a really
you see,
interesting approach. Yeah, because it's like the company is reflecting actually a broader, I think, social, even cultural and perspective on how they're perceiving
exactly.
AI. And in the China and US, often the conversation is so fixated on improving efficiency, and people who are utilizing AI are actually more burnt out because they are like 10xing themselves or whatever these days. But in Europe, that conversation is so different, and you can say maybe much more humane. However, like you said, the bottleneck right now is then how do these companies become the next generation, like so relevant in the future
Yes.
once this becomes normalized. So it's interesting. I want to go back to that a little bit later as well. I want to touch on something before we get further into, I guess, the comparison of, the adoption and everything is you and I met each other essentially online because I found out about your work that you helped a lot of European companies adopt Chinese model. I found that was very, very fascinating, right? You advised them on how to basically integrate, say, the Minimax and CAI of the world. Now, a lot of these model companies, when I speak to them, they say their priority right now is to basically sell globally. And of course, the Western markets are some of the most lucrative markets. The US headwinds are mostly in geopolitics, compliance. Europe, how do you view that as a market for them or opportunity for them? Like, is it equally challenging for these companies to sell to enterprises in Europe, or do you think there are more opportunities for them right now and they're kind of taking off a bit more?
Yeah. If I think the conclusion, if I can state at the very beginning, is kind of in Europe, definitely there are more opportunities than for Chinese large language model companies than in Europe, than in US, sorry. I have two proofs for that. Firstly is I discussed with a CTO who is also a schoolmate from my school, Polytechnique. And actually, he was very interested also by my newsletters on LinkedIn. And then one day he asked me the question, so apart from DeepSeek, what are the other models, Chinese models, that we can use to improve our efficiency? Because when we meet he told me when we meet most of the IT implementation companies, they came with the solution like Anthropic or ChatGPT or OpenAI or Google Gemini. So we don't see so many options. He mentioned the word options of Chinese models, and we know that Chinese models are more cost efficient. And then we can talk about token maxing. I think it's kind of related topic. So this is one thing. I think in Europe, actually for the companies from the business perspective, they are also looking for different variety of different models so that they can bring what I said before, a best cost performance ratio models in the organization. So this is one thing. And then I told him that most of the Chinese large language model companies, firstly, they started their business in China, and then they try to have the global influence. Like the most advanced one is 0.01.ai, but the other ones, they are trying to catch up, like ZAI you mentioned, also Minimax. Um, so I think the thing is, what I see today is the ecosystem of Chinese models are not currently penetrating into the European markets. But definitely there's a room for Chinese players. The second thing is I always take the comparison with the other industries like EV industries, like car industries, because you will see Europe put a lot of tariffs on Chinese vehicles. Because okay, you see a lot of Chinese vehicles because of Europe wants to protect their own industries, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, they are not putting 100% tariffs they are putting somehow reasonable tariffs on the Chinese vehicles. So the bottom line I want to mention is I lived in Europe before, and I know the mindset of European people. The mainstream, of course, we have different views. I think the mainstream for European people, most open ones, are saying, okay, we need fair competition. The EV cars is just because, the European commissions are claiming that, okay, you produce in China, but we in Europe, we produce in a more sustainable way, so our cost is higher, blah, blah, blah. So if we take this comparison, I think definitely there will be some places for Chinese companies in condition that we play fairly in the European market. And then we might come back to the third point I mentioned before. Of course, there's a point of AI sovereignty. The biggest player of the European AI ecosystem is still Mistral. So it's the biggest player in the foundation model. And of course, Mistral should be one of the choices options when we suggest to European clients as the large language models. So I would see that if tomorrow the Chinese model enter these European markets, they will face a fierce competition with Mistral, because Mistral basically they have a government back, let's say, from France, and they have a very good positioning in the ecosystem. You will see in 2 or 3 weeks there will be a Viva Tech in France, and Mistral for sure they will be on the stage, and for sure there will be French or German presidents, French president and German chancellors. And with their unique positioning, I think most of the European companies, they will firstly consider Mistral, but still, if Chinese companies can bring something on the table, business-wise, the European companies will not only limit to only one model. There will be some balance between different models. And today, the balance I see is Mistral versus other US models.
That's
So to
interesting.
your question,
Are
yeah,
there
I think there are
yeah.
some opportunities for Chinese models. Sorry.
No, I just think it's really interesting because I think it also totally makes sense when I talk to people who are in the Korean market or covering the Middle Eastern markets. Sovereign AI is just such a top of mind like conversation for companies, whether it's for compliance reasons or regulatory reasons, whatnot. So it makes a lot of sense that Mistral's positioned very well in Europe. However, are there any other players that maybe we're overlooking outside because we're not that familiar with the European market? Any other foundational model labs that we should know of coming out of Europe?
Yeah, there will be, apart from Mistral, there's another large language model whose name is H, but it's less famous. And then you will have, it's not if we can say it's kind of world model by Yan Lequan,
Mm,
the ex-researcher in Meta Fair, and he just came back to France and raised a large amount of money for his model. It's called AMI. Yeah, AMI.
interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the token maxing thing you touched on just now.
Yeah.
So offline, we talked about this a little bit recently. There's been getting some buzz. It's quite funny, whether it's like big tech in the US or big tech in China. When I talk to them, people are saying, okay, our managers are pushing us to token max. If we don't basically use AI in our job and figure out ways to essentially replace ourselves, we get replaced, which is the irony in all of this. It's all kind of sci-fi. But then the joke's kind of been played now on the companies because, there was just headlines coming out saying this one guy basically spent like more than $500,000 on
Yeah.
tokens in a month. And that's obviously more than his salary. And then companies are realizing, wait, this token maxing strategy is not cost efficient at all. So
Yeah.
from an operational standpoint, I know you are someone who work a lot with companies to implement AI and find the most cost efficient way for their operations, right? And not just cost, like you mentioned, it's like a balance of costs, and operational sustainability as well as obviously company morale and everything. So how do we view this trend? Where is this going? Is this sustainable? Like just give us some high level views on this.
Yeah. there's a lot to talk about this because the token is becoming really a trendy topic for individuals and as well for companies. So to answer your firstly to answer your questions, I don't think that's sustainable. My view is the token mapping is kind of marketing for infrastructure companies. And of course, as you say, there's a lot of people burn a lot of tokens and more than their salaries. Then the question would be, if I pay your salary or if I pay your tokens, we'll come back to this point afterwards. I discussed with some Chinese companies, very cost cautious. I think the thing is today when we actually for the tech companies in China, there's also some ranking of token consumed. But it's kind of indicator of how people use AI, but it's not. Is it the right indicator? I don't think so. Basically, I think in current status, we didn't find a very good metric to measure the performance of a human being empowered by AI. That's the thing. So we take a kind of proxy indicator, which is the token and of course, there's a lot of waste of token in the usage, and I'm not sure that every single employees would be the master of AI if we don't provide the sufficient upscaling in terms of the AI, because from individual perspective, sometimes we use vibe coding, but if we don't master the basics of coding, then we might waste some time as well as some money and tokens in the vibe coding. So this is my view. So the token maxing is kind of marketing stuff, and the day when we find out again for the AI organization or for the organization how we can measure the performance of individuals with AI, then we might have a clear picture and no longer token max. And the other interesting thing you mentioned already, but I read also is Microsoft, they are kind of switched to their Copilot because if everyone used the Anthropic cloud model, they'll become too expensive for the whole organization. It's just not cost efficient. And it brings me to my point is when discussed with some Chinese companies. So, Chinese companies are very cost conscious, and they are thinking is, I think that it was a joking, but this is a right angle of thinking is, shall we, in the salary of our employees, to allocate a part of the tokens monthly for our employees, meaning that okay, if in the past situations, 100% of the salary tomorrow might be 85% of yesterday's salary plus 50% by tokens, and the tokens you can use, and if you don't use tokens efficiently, then it's the savings for the company. So
That's really
this is
crazy. But I kind of see
it's
what you mean. Like, so essentially it helps you with your job. So that's why it's on you. But then what if you
exactly
just
so.
don't, but what if you don't want to use AI? What if you're just like, I can do my job perfectly fine the way I did it before, and I don't want to token max, and I want to keep my 100%.
Exactly. That's the question that the Chinese company need to answer. But you reflect on your point mentioned that the token consumption is sometimes much more expensive than the salary. So it causes
Yeah.
Chinese companies to think that, okay, I spend salary, I spend tokens for the intelligence, I spend 2 times to hire employee.
Yeah.
So why
Yeah.
not combine them together and doing kind of tomorrow's package is your basic salary plus tokens.
So actually on
So
that, how should companies think about it then? Because, it's really easy to say, okay, this is an AI native company. There's 20 people in this company. Everyone's token maxing because it does bring the 20 people's efficiency to say like 400 people, whatever it is, right? However, what about the traditional companies, especially the ones that you work with? Like a lot of them are OEMs, manufacturers, it doesn't make that much sense for them to really jumping on this AI bandwagon as well then, or how do you advise them then? Or how should they think about it?
yeah, I think for the traditional companies or European companies, it doesn't make sense for everyone to give the token maxing, because as I said, I'm pretty aligned with the European approach, saying that okay, in order to release or unleash the value of AI, we need at least to upskill a little bit our employees. We cannot expect employees like with 30 years experience in the industry, and tomorrow he switched to a kind of AI expert in his company. So I just want to combine your question with my previous comment, saying that today, if you look into the Chinese market today, there are some big traditional telecommunication companies like China Mobile. They are proposing the token plan for individuals. It's like your smartphone monthly
Wow.
monthly plan.
Like data plan.
Yeah, it's a kind of data plan, exactly. So the token is becoming kind of infrastructure like electricity, like water, or like your smartphone monthly subscription. So this might be the way the companies might pursuing, saying that, okay, yesterday I might give you a kind of monthly plan for your telephone, so I can reach out to you and you can read the emails and you can use the telephone to work with emails, work Teams, with Zoom, etc., etc. And tomorrow it might be a kind of monthly subscription for different employees. Then you have a monthly token plan you can use for your personal, no, for the professional work in AI. I guess that might be the way that the China might be moving for individuals and for companies. And again, for European companies, they are not still there yet. But when I discuss this vision and this kind of trend, they are pretty interested. They might be moving in the same direction for the companies, at least not at national level, but at the company level, to provide kind of monthly subscription to limited people who master AI. And the first wave of people adopting AI is their coding team, their IT team, their digital team. So they will be the first employees to use this kind of concept of monthly subscription to tokens. And of course, for manufacturing companies, there's a lot of people working in the factories, in the plants, or on the production lines, and they are not be impacted. They will not be impacted by this kind of AI wave. But still, I think the things are moving slowly, and it's changing so quickly. But this is currently my discussion with European companies.
That's actually very interesting. It makes a lot of sense actually to build it in as like a infrastructure like 5G data, and then
Yeah,
it's really like there's a cap on how much the company will pay for, but then how you utilize it should be, and you're more mindful than on how you're utilizing this, right? And not wasting the
exactly.
tokens and by that thus, wasting your energy, compute, everything. So I want to bring it back to the Chinese pricing models really quickly. I know you work with a lot of European companies. They are the buyers, essentially. You also help them connecting with the Chinese vendors, essentially, which are like the Chinese LLM labs, Minimax, Drupal, Moonshot, etc. Now, how should we understand the pricing model of these companies right now? Because it's obvious that they are pricing themselves much cheaper to US peers. Some might, obviously argue that their performance might not be as on par or as at the
Mhm.
frontier. However, even when they do play catch up, the reflection of it is it just seems like a complete different cost structure. Help us understand that, like they're thinking, why they're pricing it much lower, and how that plays out in the long run.
Yeah. Um, Actually, there are two perspectives on that. Maybe I will firstly talk from the client's perspective, and then I might conclude with the recent price decrease by DeepSeek. Maybe you have already read about it. So from the European companies, as I said before, the thinking is that's the statement for the companies I met. We do not need anthropic models for all the time. That's for sure, because this is very expensive, even for a company. So for sure, they will need a kind of different options from different models, like the best US models and the best cost performing models from Chinese models, and the AI sovereignty models like Mistral. So basically, there will be three combinations, and then there will be engineering or technical issue. That meaning that how to manage these models to perform the right tasks. So meaning use cloud to perform the most complex tasks and use Chinese models to perform kind of less complex tasks. And I think European companies, they understand this. And of course, they are looking for Chinese models for the cost effectiveness. And I would say this is also one of the bottleneck of US models, because they are very in a relative way, very expensive. Therefore, it's the bottleneck of the massive adoptions. Only the European big companies can afford like continuous use of US models. Well, there are a lot of SMEs in Europe. So this is the thing. And for the Chinese model suppliers, I think the way I see the price issue is, if you ask me, can Chinese companies increase their token prices? I would say surely, because if you look into the financial report of ZAI or Minimax, actually, they are not, they invest a lot in the research to develop these models. And the expectation from the industry, AI industry, is if you want to train or pre-train a next model, it will be more costly than the previous pre-trainings. So for sure, Chinese companies can increase their token prices. And that's what they are doing actually after the open flow, if you read into the news. And the thing is, compared to the US model, still the Chinese model are very cheap. I think there's one very strategic thinking angle is, if you think about the Chinese models, most of them, they are open source models. And the thinking angle is, I think for the Chinese model players is, we open source these models because we want people to use these models, because they can deploy on their own infrastructure. They will have more freedom, or they can use our open source model to train their own models. And maybe they will use our tokens by, or they will understand or know our models better by open sourcing. So if we combine this thinking angle, I would say the Chinese model strategy might be to increase the influence in the world, maybe in the developing markets, where people are more cost conscious, and to help people to use this AI, to adopt AI in a cheaper way. And then in the long term, in the future, that's very Chinese, maybe again to increase the prices once we take the market positioning. It's like the price competition for the last decade regarding this digital or sharing economy or digital era. Nothing have changed. So a very aggressive pricing strategy to at least to have the market share, and then once we have the market share, then we can establish our positioning in the market and kind of do a lot of monetization stuff. That's the one thing regarding the increased influence globally, and take the leadership on in the AI industry for the developing countries, in my opinion. Of course, going to Europe is part of their strategy. So this is from the Chinese model's perspective, and it's a very special case. Of course, this is DeepSeek. DeepSeek released just before, and right after the release, during 1 month, I think for the developers, we enjoyed 75% of discount regarding the token price. So it's very deep discount. And recently, I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, DeepSeek announced that they will keep this 75% discount for forever. So it's kind of they just discount their token prices by such a huge amount of discount. I'm pretty surprised. And again, it launched the price war in the market, and you see recently Xiaomi decreased also their token prices, and I don't know if other players will follow in Chinese market at least. But if we think about DeepSeek cases, it's a very special case because DeepSeek this year, it doesn't create a lot of buzz in the AI community in the US. I think so. I'm not living in US, but I read some news. I think that nowadays DeepSeek are not saying that we have the best performing model. And in terms of the coding performance, DeepSeek is not at the top level compared to other models. But the interesting thing is DeepSeek this time is trained on the Huawei's ASIN chips. So again, I think the price decrease of DeepSeek, combining with their recent news of raising money and hiring some harness engineering across the world, I would suspect that DeepSeek, by decreasing their prices, they just want to break through the ecosystem established by NVIDIA. This is my thinking, and that's why after the President Trump visit to Beijing, there are 10 Chinese companies are now authorized to buy NVIDIA chips. But up to now, you see few orders. I think there's a thinking from the national-wise, from the nation saying that, okay, with DeepSeek, can we break through the NVIDIA chips plus CUDA? And if, because that's so cheap, so most of people, they might use DeepSeek in the future, and they might use Huawei as ASIC chips because DeepSeek are trained on these chips and it's best support DeepSeek's performance. So
So
this
the
is
open
another
source
angle.
strategy.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So you will
It's basically
see,
a strategy to get people in, to get the developer into its ecosystem, its own
exactly.
community first, which is what Jensen's been saying the whole time. Yeah. Um, no, I agree with you on that. I actually I want to steer away from the chips today because I'm quite fascinated. So you work with companies adopt AI, but how does that actually, what are companies really using AI for? Like we hear about stories, oh, companies are token maxing, whatnot. And the obvious one, like you mentioned, is in coding capacity, in IT. But again, not every company is in tech. Not every company needs coding capacity. So let me just say that not every company needs coding capacity. So like, what are we seeing actually on the ground, especially for maybe more brick and mortar stores or old school traditional industries? Why would people all want to adopt AI right now?
Um, uh, uh, the, the, uh, the adoption rate actually for European companies is pretty low, to be honest. Most of companies, if we say at a large scale, they don't adopt sufficiently AI and they just are afraid of missing out something. So this is a FOMO. Um, they are just feared of missing out some opportunities. And if they don't use AI today, they might be less competitive in the future. So the most common use cases I see in companies are for coding and for IT. And sometimes it's easier to measure the effectiveness of AI. That's in the most of the time in the sales marketing department. So meaning that if you use AI, you can produce more contents, and with more contents, you have more impressions. With more impressions, you might have more conversion rate. You might have more conversions, and you might have more sales revenues. So this chain is actually well formed. So by using AI, you can track the individual metrics on the chain, and then you can kind of monitor the results by using AI. And most of the time, I get a very simple question of European companies, and a very difficult question actually to answer is, what's the ROI of implementing AI? What's my return? Then it's very difficult question because in the digital, 10 years ago in the digital era, I can tell the ROI, I can estimate why, because the incremental cost of using digital products is kind of almost zero. You just need your digital products, and then it makes more efficient. It makes more automate. While in AI, it's that's very difficult because if you think about it, if you use more AI, you will consume, as you say, more tokens. So meaning that an employees, you need to pay the salary. If he is a heavy AI user to produce more contents, then you will need to pay his tokens bill. And then the ROI might not be so immediate, or there might not be ROI actually for the individual use cases. Then we come back to the question is, okay, by using this AI, how we can make the whole organization more efficient and how we can generate more revenues for the whole organization. While for the individual users, maybe there's no business case. So I think again, the difference compared to 10 years ago is the people who use AI and who use heavily AI, then he will have a bill to pay. That's a variable cost. That's very important. And secondly is the variable cost will be really the beneficial of the variable cost will really depend on the skills of each individual. You may pay $100 for employee A or employee B. If B master better AI, then you will have 10 times more results, financial results compared to the first case. So again, I think you asked the right question. The ROI question is definitely a very good question, and most European companies they seek about ROI before investing, so they are very cautious. While again, if you compare to the Chinese companies, we are more pragmatic. So let's implement a POC. It costs a little bit, but let's implement it. If it doesn't work, never mind. We waste some money, but we continue, we iterate, or we continue with another use cases.
So you think the Europeans are taking a more cautious approach, but actually more cautious on what the potential ROI is. then I bring it to the question that is a bit more philosophical and like a societal, not so businessy, is then isn't the headline or the mainstream discussion on AI is replacing our jobs completely overblown then? If companies are not even investing in the like, buying tokens, I don't think they're replacing people and just replacing roles with like AI. Are they?
Um,
How do I understand
th-
this?
yeah, uh, for the tech companies, I think your statement or the statement is true for the tech companies because there are a lot of coders, there are a lot of programmers, and actually, I see a lot of developers, individual developers in the market because they work for tech companies, and now with the AI, that will be very challenging. And again, currently for European companies, if I would say, they are still at the very very early stage compared to China. The cautious is one thing, and we can take the other angle. Cautious equals to conservative, so they are a little bit conservative, and they care a little bit more about their employees. So actually, I will not see in European market AI replace a lot of human workers. It's not happening today. Will that
Mhm.
happen tomorrow? I think so. But again, we need to find another society structure, or we need to find uh, other job opportunities for the human beings when AI comes to the companies and replace some of them. It will not like very aggressive like at the tech companies like Meta or other tech companies. It will happening slowly, but of course, AI has impact on the employment
Mhm.
even for European companies. Um,
The economy
and
itself will evolve, and jobs will look different.
exactly, that's exactly what I was in Europe 10 years ago. It's exactly the discussion around Industry 4.0. If people remember, we say that okay, tomorrow we'll have some automated machines in the plant. So it's happening currently in China. We call it a dark light factory. So it's very automated. You can run the factory without turning the light on. So basically, at that time in Europe, we had a very big debate on where the employers should go once Industry 4.0 is in place. And the answer was the answer was there will be some upscaling and new job opportunities created with Industry 4.0, and we need more skilled people to master these machines. And that's the same thing for the AI. Tomorrow we will need people who can orchestrate, who can manage the agents, AI agents, instead of doing the same job as a simple agent.
Yeah, I see. So on that, I want to ask, given Europe's strength in industrial strength manufacturing, where do we see opportunities for companies to really couple that with the development evolution of AI right now?
You mean the use cases, right, for the companies?
Use cases, new opportunities, new potential businesses. Where could we see new businesses come out, or new business revenues for current
Yeah,
industrial companies?
yeah. Um, and for European companies, currently the use cases we're discussing is more around kind of efficiency use cases. So, for example, they want AI to help them to do some root cause analysis, because if you run a plant and if the machine is kind of down, the production line is kind of stopped, and then you lose basically a lot of money because you missed the opportunity of producing X units of your products, of your cars. So basically, people care a lot about how I can analyze the root causes of a machine being down, and this traditionally was a very heavy task. We need a lot of experts to be involved, and because there's a whole system of different machines in the same plant, and the machine is kind of production line is kind of made in a industrial sequential. So every parameter on different machines might have an impact on the chain. So we need to involve a lot of experts. And by doing AI, actually, we can understand better. We can do some causality analysis and do some root cause analysis and find the root causes more easily. And in the future, to do some predictive maintenance and to improve the efficiency of the companies. So this is current happening. People are asking for that. And some companies are also asking for these kind of knowledge management platforms. Like we need knowledge management for new enrollment of employees, for HR policies, for reimbursement policies, for new employees onboarding, etc., etc. So a lot of around that. And if we look into the vision and into the future, I think European companies are start to think about it. I'm talking a lot about European companies, but that's the same thing for the companies in China. It's just kind of more advanced. So sorry, I come back. So if we take into the vision of European companies, actually they are also thinking about the future, which is how I can use AI to increase my revenues and to make the pie a little bit bigger. And then it comes to the discussion of agentic economy, meaning that can I use my agent to kind of sourcing for my company? Can I use my agent to do some business development, to write emails, to do some cold calls, to reach out to potential clients? So these are the things that people will come to think in the next wave, saying that, okay, if we have a very good engineering of our agents, guardrail of our agents, what an agent can say, what he cannot say, what he should say in which context. So once this is done, again, it's very European. They need to use everything kind of under control. Then I think we are ready to go for the agentic economy. So meaning that agent can do business in the place of the companies.
I see. And if I were to say I'm the founder of an AI native company, how would you
Yeah.
advise me other? Because it would be very different from what you've been saying about advising more traditional industries.
Yeah. If you are a AI native founder, I think I'm doing the currently the same position. Um, there are a lot of things to consider. For example, in terms of the technology, the foundation model is evolving pretty quickly. So how I make sure that my AI agent idea or concept or business model will not be revolutionized or disrupted by these foundation models. This is something we need to think about. The second thing is I always tell myself and also people in the same AI community is we don't start to build our products from scratch without discussing with the clients. So why not in a more safer way? Why not discuss with the clients, build products for certain clients, and then kind of conceptualize the products and build more standardized product that we can sell, we can sell to the market and we can scale in the future. It means the build of the product comes always from a specific demand of the clients. And once there's a demand, then we can do something, we can build things. Why this? Because in my opinion, all the AI native founders, I think we are pretty aligned, is produce something or build a product in the future will be much easier in the past. And if we compete with AI in terms of the intelligence, there's no way a human being can catch up with AI. And we should place our time where the AI cannot compete and where we still need a human being. I make very simple analogy to some friends of mine saying emotional intelligence, meaning that how we can establish relationship with the people, how we can build a trust. So still, I think if I'm a founder or if AI native founder, he should go out to meet clients, discuss with clients, build a trust, and have some demands from the clients because building the process will be pretty easily and the cost of failing is pretty low. So build fast, fail fast, scale fast, and it works even more in the future.
And then my question on that is how do we actually understand how to build guardrails and safety around this? Because you talked about how Chinese companies you work with are often a bit more like gung ho, let's go, we'll fix it if after it's broken kind of a mentality, whereas the European companies maybe are seen as a bit of a slow adopter in many ways. You can say more cautious, more humane, and protecting their current employees. But right, like end of the day, if this is the future evolution of our economy, how do we go forward with this? And then how do we actually build more intentionally?
Yeah. Um, uh, technically, actually, there are a lot of skills. There are a lot of technical stuff in the area to build the guardrails for the agents. Like Anthropic, I think they are doing a very great job, and also some Chinese foundation model companies and also agentic companies. So all of that, they call that the harness engineering. So they put every concept into the harness, saying that okay, we need to build a harness and to make the guardrails. So this is the technical perspective, but still, this technical perspective is very from the developers or programmers. And if we bring the case into a real company case, then it really depends on each use cases on each company. I would say for any new human employees, who is a new hire in the company, at least when I join European companies, there's always a code of conduct. You see, it's simply a document that we need to learn. We need to be compliant in the future in our work or professional work within the company. So I would say for the AI agents, that's the same thing. They are very important in the future, a kind of infrastructure to evaluate the performance of the AI agents, meaning that if AI agents is delivering the performance as we wished before, so there's a kind of benchmark evaluation, and also the evaluation should include also is the AI agent performing correctly as we wished in terms of the code of conduct. And the code of conduct should, in my opinion, be written by human beings. It's like Anthropic team, they have written a 100-page of constitution for cloud, and then each company should write their code of conduct for every agent in every department. And a lot of Chinese founders, then they are entrepreneurs. They are also joking at, okay, we develop an AI agent today for companies, but the next question will come shortly is when should we retire our AI agent if it doesn't perform correctly, or when we should replace them. So you see, the evaluation or benchmark of the AI agents would shortly become a problem in the market when we adopt massively the agents.
So then each organization will have to institutionalize this, essentially, you're saying, and have their own standards of code of conduct, whatnot.
I
That
think
makes a
so.
lot of sense. Yeah, and just like how companies right now regulate data usage, even company devices, whatnot, right? Like this will all just be part of the compliance that employees will have to learn. Um, I want to ask you one last question, which is what's one differentiated view you hold?
In terms of the AI,
In terms of everything, it's a question I like to just kind of throw it at people when they come on the podcast. It's a wild card.
okay. I think one of the points I always mention, it comes back to my background, is today the AI race is between US and China. So we say that European is kind of lag behind. Um, but do not forget that actually technology is one thing and the usage of technology is another thing. And again, if we come back to my statement saying that implementing AI is not about technology, it's about process, culture, and organization and human being. So I think the play card of the Europe is they're pretty good at regulations. And if you think about, they issued GDPR before the Chinese PIPO, which is protection of personal data. And they have this kind of European AI Act. And then if I think about how Anthropic, they penetrated these enterprise solutions versus ChatGPT and generate today more revenues than OpenAI in terms of the ARR because of the simple concept of responsible AI, then I would say tomorrow, if the AI comes to the enterprise level, enterprise implementation, and if everyone should be responsible in the company with their own agent or with their own developed AI, maybe Europe has a card to play in the AI in the world of AI, because their initial statement is kind of, we want AI to be regulated, we want AI to be responsible. So this is my point of
Thank you
view.
so much. I think, today you've been really generous just explaining to me and the audience just how AI is really being implemented into these big companies and the more European perspective. Is there anything else you think we're missing or any misconceptions we might have about the relationship between European companies and Chinese companies or how Europe is perceiving AI? Is there anything you think we're missing or do you think we covered it all mostly?
Yeah, I think we covered most of them, but I just want to mention one thing is even though we say that okay, there's two different nations in the world, U.S. and China, competing AI, we take different directions of AI, and still I receive a lot of recently questions from European companies, and they are really really interested by Chinese tech companies. So you would see they are pretty open and they come frequently nowadays to China and they have the mindset of learning what Chinese companies are doing, what Chinese foundation models are doing, and especially seeking their use cases. So one thing I would say is when I receive them, we show some very advanced Chinese use cases. They will say, "Oh, you are in a different environment because we have different laws, we have different regulations compared to Europe." But they are quite interested about what's happening in Hong Kong because the regulations in Hong Kong is pretty closer to European markets. So still, I see we might have a lot of potential collaborations between China and Europe in terms of AI, in terms of the physical AI. We didn't mention the robotics, and definitely it's an area where European can have more playground, not only about the humanoid robots, they want also to have their places in the hardware value chain for the robots, like a lot of.
Actually,
Should,
I wanna touch on that. I'm sorry, I know we hit our time, but
no
what is
worries.
your view on that? Because European companies traditionally been the leaders in robotics, right? Industrial
Yeah,
robotics, like machinery. Um, where do they stand now in the world? Are the Germans and the Japanese still leading the space, or how are they gonna be kind of presenting themselves or positioning themselves on the supply chain right now?
yeah. So for the very traditional industry robots that let's say it's like KUKA, you have a lot of robotic arms. So they are still kind of leading the world. So you have a lot of robotic solutions implemented in different car makers' plants. But for the humanoid robots, actually Europe is like behind again because it's not only about the value about not only about the supply chain of the robots itself, it's also about again the software and large language models behind the robots. So the mindset of European companies today is okay, we understand China again has the most advanced uh, humanoid robotic companies in the world. US has maybe advanced in software, in large language models or word models. China is pretty good at the supply chain. So again, the same question they ask themselves. But the recent demands I receive from European companies are two. The first one is, as a traditional European companies, we know that they know that the value chain of making a car is quite similar. Let's say it's not 100% the same thing, but there's 60 or 50% are common of making a car and making humanoid robots. So their thinking is, okay, can we participate in the wave of these kind of robots with the development of China? So like motors, like electric motors, like actuators. Yeah, German guys, they're pretty good at the supply. So that's the first thing. The second thing is demand is a lot of European companies saying that, okay, we have the real use cases in Europe because we are lack of workforces in our plants. It could be an aging population. It could be some strike of labor unions. So they, in order to keep the plant working, as we said before about the predictive maintenance, they are very welcome the Chinese robotics in the European markets. Again, the robots need to be compliant with European regulations, conditions, and they are very welcome. So the most common demand I receive is, hey, I want to do a kind of analysis about how I can be part of the supply chain in China and how I can leverage Chinese supply chain to be more competitive. The second one is, okay, I have a use cases, then we need to think about how I can implement the humanoid robots in the European markets. And then we can discuss about the business model of the robotic companies like Unitree or AJ Bots, because it's not only about putting their robots in the factory, it's about calibrating the robots, it's about capturing the data, it's about think about the closed loop of robots training, it's about again the guardrails, how make sure robot will not harm a human being if they cross each other in the plant.
Hmm.
So yeah, this is quite common nowadays for physical AI for the European companies also. Yeah.
But in fact, actually, you mentioned KUKA, and it was bought out by Meidi, right, a couple years ago.
Yes.
So you're also seeing a lot of Chinese companies, like in the embodied AI, physical AI space, actually actively buying out traditional brands in Europe. How is that received actually locally?
Actually, for the embedded robots or humanoid robots, there are not so many M&A of Chinese players acquiring European companies. So basically, I think for the humanoid robots, let's say the robots like AGI Bot or like Unitree, China is much more advanced. And there was one robotic company in France, but they are kind of in financial difficulty. And another robotic company, they are invested by Renault in France, but still the technology, if you look into that, is not as advanced as Unitree or AGI bots, for example.
I see. Um, One last question is just, do you think it's fair that we're overgeneralizing all the European companies into just one EU right now? Or do you think actually a lot of different countries have different goals, ambitions, or even, future tracks for them laid out?
Very good question. So I can only, when I see European companies, sorry, actually I'm thinking about French and German companies. So actually I cannot represent all the European countries, and for different countries like Spain, Italy. I'm not familiar with the country. I didn't live there. I didn't receive enough clients from these countries. So actually, you are right. When I talk European companies, I'm more thinking about French and German companies.
Okay.
And of
Well,
course,
thank you so
they are
much.
pretty different.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. I just think it's such a unique perspective because it's easy for me to find someone who tells me the pure European perspective. It's easy for me to find someone on the China US, but it's harder for for me to find someone who straddle between Europe and the Chinese market. It's obviously not as mainstream. So I'm really appreciative of your time and your insights and your sharing. Thank you so much, Alex.
Thanks, Grace. Yeah, thanks a lot again for inviting me and accepting me for the podcast. And thanks a lot for your audience. And yeah, let's keep in touch. If any chance happens, we can have another talk if needed.
Definitely.